Welcome everyone to Australia Property Unmasked channel. I am Jeff. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update.
Last month, the grand plan for the Brisbane Olympics was officially announced, featuring many infrastructure projects, and the main stadium proposal has also been finalised. This is Australia's largest infrastructure investment project in the past few years, with an investment amount of nearly 100 billion Australian dollars. You could say this is the biggest project in Australia in recent years. But today, I'm not here to tell you how bright Brisbane's future is. On the contrary, I want to let everyone know that there are actually undercurrents in Brisbane's property market. So, which property projects are being sugar-coated and hyped up thanks to the Olympics, but in reality, are things you absolutely shouldn't touch? At the same time, there are some structural issues in Brisbane's property market. A lot of real estate agents actually know this very well, but they choose not to say it out loud. In Brisbane and the Gold Coast, newly built townhouses and apartment projects in southeast Queensland have always been sold at a higher premium compared to the second-hand property market. This situation has been going on for quite a while, since about 3 or 4 years ago, when the premium was around 10 to 15%. Now, the average premium for development projects has already exceeded 30%, and the highest premiums can even reach up to 50% in total. Why has the premium for newly built townhouses and apartment projects become so out of control? In this episode, I want to take everyone back to the root of the problem and help you understand the structural issues in Brisbane's real estate market. In Australia, if developers want to launch off-the-plan apartment or townhouse projects, they need to start selling units even before construction begins. Many buyers will sign contracts with the developers. According to Australian law, the cash deposit paid by buyers must be kept in a solicitor's trust account to protect the buyer's interests. So before the developer hands over the property and before the entire project is completed, all the investment funds and risks in the real estate are fully borne by the developer. Also, most projects in Australia, including those in Brisbane, rely on bank loans for construction. Only then will they hire builders to construct the properties. Since the beginning until now, construction costs have surged significantly worldwide. On top of that, the Reserve Bank of Australia has entered an interest rate hike cycle. Over the past few years, the costs of many projects have skyrocketed. These two factors have really dealt a heavy blow to developers. If developers run into cash flow problems, many projects can't be completed at the contracted price or delivered on time. Another scenario is that even if the developer is financially strong enough to hold on, the builder might still go bankrupt due to their own financial issues. If the builder goes bankrupt halfway through construction, it can be very difficult for the developer to find another builder to finish the project. That's why, in Brisbane over the past 3 or 4 years, a large number of projects have had to either cancel all contracts or significantly increase contract prices in order to complete transactions with buyers. Many projects haven't even started construction yet, and when the developers do the math, they just can't make it work, so in the end they have to either cancel the whole project or postpone it indefinitely. Right behind me is Queen's Wharf, Brisbane's newest landmark in recent years. It took almost 10 years from planning to completion. But all the challenges faced by this iconic project also reflect the problems in the real estate market across the entire southeast Queensland coast, including Brisbane. Recently, there was a new report pointing out that due to soaring costs, Brisbane's new landmark, Queen's Wharf, has already triggered contract cancellations. 800 apartment contracts for this project have already been cancelled. Since December last year, buyers have been notified about changes to the project. Afterwards, more than half, about 445 buyers, agreed to re-sign their contracts at a higher price. As for the remaining half of the buyers, they are still waiting for their deposits to be refunded. The article also mentioned that other developers have followed suit, with different projects either increasing prices or canceling contracts. As a local real estate agent in Brisbane, I did a rough calculation. In the past 3 or 4 years, over 70% of new townhouse or apartment projects have either been completely cancelled or required a significant price increase in the contract to complete the deal. And this is no longer just an issue with a single project or a particular developer. It's a structural problem affecting the entire construction industry in southeast Queensland. That's why 3 or 4 years ago, I already decided that I would no longer recommend any new off-the-plan townhouse or apartment projects for sale on this channel. Now, all developers are very aware of the market situation, so when they want to sell new off-the-plan projects, they absolutely have to factor in the extra and unpredictable construction costs. Interest costs are included in the contract price. That's also why you'll see that new developments in Brisbane can have a premium of up to about 50% compared to the second-hand property market. In addition, some developers, in order to protect their own risks and interests, choose to wait until the construction period is almost finished, or even sell directly as completed properties. After they know all the costs, they can then include these costs in the contract price. However, developers who took on all the risks in the past few years will also factor this low-risk element into the contract as well. That's why you'll see that the starting prices for many newly completed properties in Brisbane are extremely high, so high that it's jaw-dropping. I work in both the new homes market and the second-hand homes market, so I compare them every day. Overall, I look at the price premium between new and second-hand properties, because only by doing this can I make sure my buyers get the best deal. There are actually a lot of cases with high price premiums. In Brisbane, new developments always have a very significant impact. As for the policies in Australia, there are no restrictions for locals buying second-hand properties, so many local buyers turn to the second-hand market to avoid paying those huge premiums. You'll notice that for a lot of listings from agents, whether it's new townhouses or apartment projects, some agents have been selling them for a whole year, but there are still plenty of units available to choose from. When developers realize that there are no buyers in the local market, they have to change their approach and adjust their strategies. To some extent, they shift their focus to overseas buyers who know nothing about the local market, moving their business elsewhere to find buyers who aren't aware of the situation to take over these properties. In the past 2 months, I've heard that several local developers and real estate agents have already gone to overseas cities, including Hong Kong, Guangzhou, and Taipei, to hold property exhibitions showcasing certain developments, hoping to attract buyers who will stay. With the announcement of the Brisbane Olympic Plan, they are trying to offload properties or apartment units that locals don't want, clearing out the remaining inventory. Apart from the Olympic effect in Brisbane, this has made it easier to clear out unsold inventory. In the past 2 months, there have been especially many developers taking high-priced projects overseas to sell, mainly thanks to strong support from the federal government. Starting from April 1st, the Australian government has banned all foreigners, including international students in Australia, people applying for immigration, and those who have not yet obtained permanent residency, from buying any second-hand properties, in order to curb the continuous rise in housing prices. However, this policy does not prohibit foreigners from buying new properties, so for developers who are stuck with unsold local projects, this policy is practically a lifeline. They can sell these unsold units to some overseas buyers. I believe the construction industry issues I described above are not limited to Queensland or Brisbane. Other states are also facing similar situations when it comes to new property developments. However, the construction industry and market conditions are different in every state and city. It's best to consult local experts to understand the actual situation in your area. I'm just observing the situation with new developments in Brisbane, where things are growing out of control. In addition, the major Olympic venue infrastructure projects have also officially kicked off. I believe this will bring another wave of impact to Brisbane's construction industry. In addition to the development of new buildings, real estate agencies that use the Olympics as a selling point have also extended their tentacles to the second-hand housing market. This is the place. This lush, green field will become the main stadium for the Brisbane Olympics by 2032. Right here at this spot. And just next to the main stadium is actually the Kelvin Grove main stadium. After the location was announced, many real estate experts said that the Kelvin Grove area would have huge potential for property value growth. They couldn't wait to promote all the advantages of Kelvin Grove. As for myself, I'm actually very, very skeptical about this kind of impulsive and one-sided view. Personally, I don't believe that just because a main stadium is being built here, the property in this area will have any special appreciation potential. In contrast, to determine whether a community has significant long-term growth potential, you have to understand the overall planning of the community, the population distribution, and its long-term development strategy. Great city, will all the infrastructure projects driven by the Olympics really be able to improve the lives of local residents? Behind me is this very busy road, Kelvin Grove Road, which is a highway. You could say it's the gateway to Brisbane city centre, and it's definitely very important. It runs from south to north straight through. Get it? This road is on my left. Right here, we've got the Queensland University of Technology campus, or QUT, as well as some medium-density residential apartment buildings. As for my right side, that's specifically the Kelvin Grove detached housing area. You'll notice that the whole area is completely separated by this Kelvin Grove Road. It's a very busy road that really divides this place. The red circle marks the Kelvin Grove area, and in the bottom right corner is Brisbane CBD, which is the city centre. So actually, Kelvin Grove's location is really ideal. The red dot shows the location of the main Olympic Stadium. The arrow is now pointing to Kelvin Grove Road, which is the main road I just photographed. Kelvin Grove Road. On the right side is the Queensland University of Technology precinct, along with some medium-density apartment buildings. On the left and above, this area is made up of detached houses. And in this area, high-density development is completely prohibited. The center of Kelvin Grove has always been quite busy and lively, which is actually related to the main road on the left. Kelvin Grove Road acts as a barrier. And to the south, it's currently separated by another major road in Brisbane, the Inner City Bypass. On the right side is the spacious Victoria Park. So unless you're someone studying at Kelvin Grove, returning to work, and making Kelvin Grove your next stop, generally it's hard to attract visitors from outside to come here just for a stroll. Plus, since this place is considered a school district, it's hard to form a long-term community vibe. That's because many residents in this area are either school staff or students from Queensland University of Technology, renting places in Kelvin Grove. Usually, after studying here for a few years, they move away. This results in more short-term residents than long-term ones, so it's hard for this community to achieve long-term development. The biggest issue with Kelvin Grove here is the lack of popularity. Most of the time, whether it's after work or on weekends, Kelvin Grove always feels like a pretty quiet neighborhood, because in reality, the population density here isn't very high. The second reason is that Kelvin Grove itself is very close to the city center, but the biggest problem is that it's separated by a lot of major infrastructure networks, including various highways like Kelvin Grove Road, the inner city bypass, and the beautiful Victoria Park. All these have become barriers, so it can't be directly connected in a straight line with other neighborhoods. As a result, outsiders rarely have the chance to come into Kelvin Grove. But actually, the population in this area isn't very large, and many of the buildings have already been taken up by QUT dormitories and campus facilities. So if you come to Kelvin Grove after work, after school, on weekends, or during long holidays, you'll feel that it's a very quiet community. Right now, I'm having lunch in West End. Why am I mentioning West End when I'm talking about Kelvin Grove? Because personally, I think West End and Kelvin Grove have some similarities. They're both very close, both near the city center, only about 5 minutes to downtown, and their campuses and supporting facilities are excellent. Also, there are plenty of second-hand apartments available in both areas, but for me, one of the biggest reservations is that the land in Kelvin Grove that can be developed into new projects is actually very limited. Basically, we can only build some high-rise apartments. All the areas zoned for high-density development have already been used up, so you won't see any new projects coming out. But I want to say, I'm actually in West End right now. Behind me is a major project in recent years, the West Village community. This is a great example of regional revitalization, commercial and residential projects in Brisbane. This old ice cream factory was redeveloped into many residential buildings, and at the time, both commercial and residential spaces were built, bringing a lot of vibrancy to the whole community. Not only did it attract a lot of new residents, but it also brought in all kinds of different shops, some high-quality restaurants, and pretty good supermarkets, and so on. Overall, these are all very important key elements in the Australian lifestyle. Through this kind of area revitalization, it allows the local real estate market to keep growing in a healthy and sustainable way. Personally, I think that even though West End is further from the main stadium compared to Kelvin Grove, I still use West End as an example to compare with Kelvin Grove. The biggest problem with Kelvin Grove is that there's extremely limited land available for new development. Therefore, from a regional perspective, the potential for improvement in after-sales methods is very low. If you look at the areas in Kelvin Grove that can be developed, especially those zoned for medium to high-density buildings, you'll see that most of the land has already been fully utilized, and there's almost no space left for redevelopment to actively revitalize the community. So, why do I think I'm right? Some real estate agents or so-called experts who know a bit about Brisbane say that Kelvin Grove should be more valuable, so they have a higher opinion of its property prices. I'm very cautious about this kind of biased argument. Let me give you another comparison with a different area. This is Kelvin Grove. If we head about 2 kilometers further east, we'll reach another area called Bowen Hills. This is the Brisbane Showgrounds. The Brisbane Showgrounds is a large outdoor event and exhibition venue, and this will be the site of the Brisbane Olympic Games Athletes Village. After the Olympics, the Athletes Village will be converted into a residential area. If you had to choose between Kelvin Grove and Bowen Hills, just picking one, in my opinion, I think Bowen Hills has greater growth potential. It's not just because a lot of new residents will move in after the Olympic Village, but if you actually visit Bowen Hills, you'll notice that most of the area around the Brisbane Showgrounds is made up of low-rise commercial buildings, only 2 or 3 stories high. If these commercial buildings are acquired and redeveloped, there won't be any opposition from local residents, nor will there be any environmental protection issues. All it takes is for a developer to be willing to launch a project similar to West Village, and that would greatly improve the quality of life for Bowen Hills residents. I believe property prices in Bowen have even greater growth potential than those in Kelvin Grove. Besides, Bowen Hills is the site of Brisbane's next major infrastructure project, the Cross River Rail. This is the new train line, and it's an important station. The government has already invested a lot of money to upgrade the facilities and amenities at this station. So I think the growth potential of Bowen Hills is definitely much greater than Kelvin Grove. But let me make it clear first, I'm not like those other real estate influencers who use all sorts of gimmicks to attract viewers, then make you wait for the next episode where I try to sell you a new development in Bowen Hills. In fact, I just noticed there are some misconceptions in the market, so I wanted to share my personal observations and local experience with you, purely from an objective and rational information sharing perspective. Now, I've come to the other side of Kelvin Grove Road, which means this area has relatively more detached houses. Kelvin Grove is actually very close to Brisbane city centre, so it's considered an inner-city suburb, and that's why it was developed relatively early. So if you go to the areas in Kelvin Grove with detached houses, you'll notice a lot of these old Queenslander timber homes behind me. All these historic Queenslander houses are protected by the government. Even if you buy one, you can't just demolish or renovate it as you like. You have to follow the relevant regulations set by the local council. Take myself as an example. I actually live in the Kelvin Grove area, less than 5 minutes from here, and the house I live in is also one of these government-protected historic Queenslander homes. All these old houses were actually built before World War II, and they're considered historical heritage. We call them character homes. Whether it's people or things, or even celebrities, the more unique they are, the harder they are to deal with. I can tell you from my own most subjective and very personal experience, these old Queenslander houses really aren't something everyone can handle. Especially because these old houses are already 70 or 80 years old. You just have to keep patching things up and doing all sorts of repairs. You have to do this, whether it's indoors or outdoors. The structure, plumbing, electrical systems, everything needs to be carefully maintained at all times. I really do love these old houses, because I think they have a lot of character and are full of personality. But some agents just use the Brisbane Olympics as an excuse to tell you that places like Victoria Park, the Gabba, Kelvin Grove, buying these heritage buildings as an investment, you really need to think twice about it. Because I'm pretty sure that those agents who say these things are just taking advantage of the Olympic gold rush dream to muddy the waters. Most of these agents, the ones telling you to buy these old houses as investments, have actually never lived in these old Queenslanders themselves, nor have they ever owned any of these old houses. So they actually have no idea about the costs of holding on to these old houses, nor do they know how high the maintenance expenses really are. The Brisbane 2032 Olympics is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for the whole of Queensland, and even for all of Australia, something we haven't seen in the past 30 years. I'm very optimistic about the outlook of Brisbane's property market, but even in the best markets, there will still be some poor quality products. Here, I'd like to share with everyone a property market perspective from an industry insider. Feel free to leave a comment below. If you want to hear more in-depth analysis about the 2032 Brisbane Olympics, or insights on different regions, so we can take a closer look at the risks and pitfalls behind the Olympic gold rush dream.